look at the Bangladesh government's activities, also Mr. 33 Sarkar already touched upon it. So the Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan is looking at enhancing resilience and growing the economy by creating green jobs and green opportunities. One important aspect under this program is, of course, upskilling the worker force and capacity development of the youth, so that they can become more skilled workers, and of course the income levels also increase. So look at the study which I was talking about, we had done for Bangladesh, specifically to the cities of Rajshahi and Khulna, which have a great pressure of climate migrants. So here we looked at what is the kind of labor market and what is the labor demand supply scenario considering the skills and qualifications. And then we tried to see what kind of value chain could be created in these two cities, which could kind of absorb this huge amount of climate migrants coming into these two cities. So look at how sustainable absorption of climate migrants can be done. Of course, there has to be a proper civic infrastructure and accessibility, and hand in hand will go the capacity building workshop as well as the technical vocational trainings. So these trainings will increase the skill levels, the industrial capacity, and also better understanding of the job market. And all of this together will increase the employment, the livelihood opportunities, contribution to the local economy, and overall a sustainable livelihood, which does not only depend on climate. And this in turn will lead to sustainable absorption of climate migrants. Do I have any more time? Or
no, Amrita, I was about to say that if you can quickly wind up within 1 minute, please, that will be appreciated.
Another minute. So just a summary slide to capture what the main things, the main action points, 4 or 5 action points, which the government and the private sector can do together. One is, of course, the political will has to be there. The key actors need to be involved in this process. Secondly, as we already discussed, consultations and consensus building is very, very important. Thirdly, capacity building, which is skill development, upskilling of the workforce. And finally, the impact analysis, identifying what are the potential inequalities and vulnerabilities, and then working on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amrita, for highlighting various research findings and also concrete steps that the governments and other actors can take moving forward. Now we have about 25 minutes at least, and I would like to facilitate some kind of discussion, take some questions from the room as well as from the floor. Before I go to the questions from the room, I understand one of the panelists, Farah, had some comment or observation that you wanted to make to Jahir, I think. So we can start with that. And then I would like to go back to the H3U about the question of climate finance. And then I will take questions from the floor. Thank you.
So one is an observation, and I was telling Zahid that had the civil society not been active around the ship-breaking industry about what used to be the conditions, which were pathetic, which were health hazards, the change would not have happened. So I think we may need to make that link, connection. But also, I was going to ask Zahid that if I Google and still get the negative stories, which is history and which is important, why am I not getting the positive stories? Are you doing enough in terms of promoting, because business people are very busy running the business, or they're not necessarily promoting. Of course, they're bigger. This is just an observation. But what I want to also share is that today in coal industries and others, they are facing legislation. Like Shell had to go to the court with Netherlands. There are even people bringing up. So is the business community aware that there is a greater level of understanding and there are legal mechanisms and there will be compensations asked? So are you preparing for that?
In fact, there was a case even against the shipping industry in the UK. So yes, Jahir.
Actually, for any kind of sustainable development, we need the NGOs and the social civil societies as well. So it has to work in partnership for improvements. And I agree with you on this regard. And, we understand that we need to move ahead. That's why we have invested so much to change the total culture of ship recycling. And that took a lot of time. We invested about 7 years to come to where we are today. And it was all done on an individual level. So what I suggest is that we, as a nation, we need to, for each industry, it has to be different, how we solve the issues. Garment industry will be having different problems than ship recycling. So we have to understand what is required, and that, that information has to be shared with the industry, that what is expected out of us, then we can plan and move ahead. Like PHP has been proactive, and we have shown the world that sustainable ship recycling is possible. But for net zero and other issues, we need to work together.
Thank you. Dhavitri, I see you with us. So I would like to come back to you on the question of climate finance. You highlighted a number of initiatives and plans and policies of the government, which can definitely lead us towards creating a better society for all of us, a net zero situation. But that would require a lot of finance and technology. So do you see that as a challenge for Bangladesh? And what information you can share with us, what is happening? You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, sir, for the very good questions, actually. Obviously, the finance and technology is a challenge for us. Obviously, there is no doubt, because we need to implement a lot of programs for our advancement. And for this, we obviously need the finance. And as Bangladesh is a developing country, and we obviously, for implementing all these projects, all these aspirations, we need technical support or updated technology from other countries. And when you see, I was telling about our NDC, we have submitted our nationally determined contribution. And in this, we have told that our unconditional contribution promise is this, and conditional contribution is promise is this. And conditional contribution means we are telling that it will be 15.12% of reduction of carbon dioxide equivalent gases if we get the finance and the technological help from the developing countries. Then it is possible to implement all these things. Obviously, it is true. If we get the finance and updated technology, then it will be very much easier for us to implement all these things. At the same time, for Bangladesh, I want to add one thing. In 2009, Bangladesh formulated the Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan, BCCSAP. And with that, we established our Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund. And from the own resources of the government, this is the first of its kind. Bangladesh established the Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund. And through this Climate Change Trust Fund, so far, Bangladesh has taken the initiative to implement around 800 projects with an expenditure of $450 million US. And around 400 projects of these are already have been implemented, and others are on the process of implementation. And at the same time, we are going to implement our NAP. We have submitted our NDC. We are preparing our NAP. And at the same time, we are preparing our MUJIB Climate Prosperity Plan. And in these plans, there are a lot of programs and projects for our adaptation and mitigation also. And
yes,
obviously, for this reason, we need the finance. And for this finance, we also need to, one thing I just finished within half a minute, we are doing our capacity building also. And capacity building is a very necessary thing for Bangladesh also. And we are in that pathway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are two questions in the chat I can see, which perhaps Dhavitri, you can answer. I'll give you some time to reflect on those two questions, but I want you to answer these questions. One question is that what the government is thinking of improving the Bangladesh river water like Buriganga, Turag and others. That is one question. And second question is more about monitoring. what the government is thinking of monitoring the behavior of private sector, for instance, in terms of pollution and climate change issues. So you can reflect on these two questions, and if you can then briefly respond later on when I invite you, that would be very much appreciated. Now I would like to take a couple of questions from the floor here in the room. And I would like to start with new voices. So I would like to go with the lady there in the blue mask, and then the gentleman at the end of the room. So those who have got a chance, I'm going to put them in the second list. So please bear with me. And 1 minute maximum for your question or comment. 60 seconds. That is also part of training. How can you ask a question in 60 seconds? Because in the Human Rights Council, you get 2 minutes to speak on behalf of the government. Part of the training. 60 seconds starts now.
Thank you very much. I'm Krishna Kisha. I'm from Chittagong Hill Tracks. Thank you for allowing me to speak here. I would like to put some recommendations actually for you. The indigenous peoples who are residing in Chittagong Hill Tracks, they are the vulnerable section of our society and are facing the climate change issues more adversely because of their lifestyle, the kind of life they lead. They are living in close relation with the forests, and because of the illegal stone extraction and also illegal logging and also deforestation, they are actually having the adverse impacts of it very recently to a great extent. So my recommendation is I would like to request the authority to include the indigenous issues in national action plan. So these kind of issues are reduced. And also in terms of tourism, that the tourism industry is very much active in Chittagong Hill Tracks because of its geographical condition. So in terms of tourism, if the authorities can consult with the local communities who are residing there.
Thank you. I think it's a very important point, the issue of consultation, and I'm sure you made that recommendation in reference to the government, but I would say it will also apply to the private sector. So consultation with the marginalized communities like indigenous peoples is absolutely crucial. Thank you very much, madam. Now I'd like to go to the back of the room. Yes, sir. Again, 1 minute, please.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Sohel Hajong from Asia Indigenous Peoples PAC. Thank you, Krishna. I want to add one thing on indigenous issues. We know that there is a indigenous traditional knowledge, which is very important and contribute to save the environment and reduce the risk of climate change impact. So, for example, in Chittagong Hill Tracks, we see every year there is a hill collapse, and a lot of people, numbers of people die every year. And where is the indigenous peoples living, there is less effects. So that's why, because indigenous peoples, they have a good connection with the environment, and they know how to protect the environment and forest. That's why we need to respect and promote this kind of indigenous knowledge to save our environment and to protect the environment and also avoid this kind of risk, climate change. Thank you.
Excellent point. I think I can't agree more, because indigenous people have been living in harmony with nature for thousands and thousands of years. So perhaps we need to go back to that way of development. Yes, so I think that is absolutely crucial. I'm going to ignore certain hands, those who have spoken on several sessions, but the boy here yes, you have the floor, and then I would like to go back to the speakers.
Yes, thank you. So we are mentioning the net zero. So I want to say that net zero is not zero. And I uploading the Bangladesh government position to fighting climate change. But my position is that in last week, 2 indigenous people in Kodagari committed suicide for the lack of water scarcity, and we sacrificed our air, we sacrificed our river, we sacrificed our air for the growth. So my position, and still in Shamnagar, people are selling their children for 6 months in brick clean. So all are human rights issue. So how we can integrate our national adaptation plan for adaptation and for business to integrate and implement to force. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps you did not ask this question to anyone specific, but if I take and abuse my discretion, Mijan, perhaps this question you may answer. Could you hear this question, Mijan, or no? I think you need to unmute yourself, please. Could you hear this question?
Yes, sure. A repetition, very short, 30 seconds will be appreciated.
Would you like to repeat the question quickly?
My question is that how we can integrate the National Adaptation Plan for Adaptation and human rights and business to protecting the human rights defender indigenous people and promoting the responsible business. Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, I know that our National Adaptation Plan has been based on wide consultations, including the indigenous people, and their concerns have been incorporated in the NAP. In Bangladesh, about the relationship between business and taking care of human rights or labor rights, there is an issue. We need to look at the private sector in Bangladesh as kind of a young and still developing. So we cannot expect that our private sector will behave the matured way as in industrial countries. But as the PSP member has shown us that they are taking steps, and we need to integrate based on the UN guiding principles on business and human rights. This bandwagoning is extremely important because the right holders, I like the title, right holders, every individual person by their very birth, by the Creator has endowed certain basic inherent rights, and we have to live up to that. And businesses cannot make profit without taking care of the social responsibility. And the second pillar of the UN guiding principle takes care of that, corporate social responsibility. And in Bangladesh also, we have much more space for private sector being more compliant with the human rights. In case of just transition, I have my own interpretation. Just transition in a country like Bangladesh, which is not very dependent on fossil fuel, means a movement, a transition from vulnerability to resilience to prosperity, because we don't have much fossil fuel and loss of jobs from the fossil fuel sector. So just transition has to be interpreted in our own ways, and I have written a policy brief arguing these kind of conceptualization of just transition in countries like Bangladesh. So I welcome the business people, and capacity building is a great factor. Our organization, ICAD, is dedicated. It's kind of a capacity building organization, and we work with the private sector. And private sector also, as Mr. Jahid has mentioned of PSP, that capacity building is important, and we are ready to work with them, because our private sector is still, some parts of the private sector looks at climate actions as kind of a lost job. So we need to
okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There is also a question in the chat box about the ecology and the biodiversity in the northeast of India and Assam being destroyed gradually. And I don't have any specific speaker from India answering that question, but I wonder if Amrita from KPMG may reflect on this question in the chat box, and I will come to you, Amrita, if you would like to respond. Or from, I don't know, ActionAid. I don't know, very specific question about India, but I don't know if you want to respond. So no. Okay. Then I want to go back to you with the earlier two questions that I have flagged for you. The question about the river water and the monitoring aspects. And of course, the people, the indigenous peoples in the room are repeatedly asking the question about the consultation, how the government is engaging with them. So if you can reflect on that as well. Thank you very much. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have learned a lot from the responders who are asking the question. I have got very good questions from them. Actually, Mizan sir was told many things about Bangladesh's positions and Bangladesh's initiative in a very elaborate in a way, in a very short time. Amrita has shed some lights on our Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan. And I was seeing Shohanur Rahman, who was asking about the consultations, and two questions from the indigenous people's respect. That was very, very good. Just I need 2-3 minutes to answer all these questions actually.
Yes, yes. You have that time, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Actually, at first you were telling about the rivers around Dhaka city. Dhaka city is surrounded by 4 rivers: Buriganga, Shitolakha, Turang, and Balu. This is a very very good condition for any city in this world which has got this rivers. And Bangladesh has declared these 4 rivers as the ecologically critical area, and we are taking our activities according to that to make this river pollution free or ameliorating its quality of the water. And at the same time,
can I just add, Mr. Dhodri, that Bangladesh, the Supreme Court has now passed a legislation, the river as a living being.
Yes.
As we are probably the second country in the world that recognizes river.
There are many now.
Huh?
There are many now.
Yes,
New Zealand.
when
Okay,
New Zealand
sure.
was the first,
Yeah.
and then I'm talking about this happened in 2019. So every river is a living entity and needs to be respected and protected.
Thank you for flagging that. So back to you, sir.
Thank you for adding. And at the same time, in all this on the about the climate change and the environmental qualities, not only water, there is also air pollution and sound pollution. All like this, Bangladesh is enhancing its monitoring capabilities to make it better. And at the same time, I want to add something about the National Adaptation Plan. I think it will give answers to many questions. And we are preparing this National Adaptation Plan, and always we are keeping in mind that it will be the whole of society approach and leaving no one behind. And for this region, the question which came from Mr. Shohanur Ram, he also knows that for this preparing this National Adaptation Plan, we are doing a lot of extensive consultations with the people from every corner of Bangladesh. We have already finished so many consultations in Bandarban. Specifically, I am telling that in Bandarban, in Khagrachori, in Sylhet, in Bogura, and other parts, many parts of that. And in Dhaka, we have accumulated these people for this consultation. We have consulted with the NGOs, we have consulted with the civil societies, we have consulted with the young people, we have consulted with the private sectors, and so on. And this consultation is going on. So during preparing this National Adaptation Plan, a lot of consultations being done, and we are taking the inputs from the people there. And at the same time, I want to add that we always believe the indigenous people who are living in the hills, they knows better how to adapt with the calamities in the hill. Who are living in the house, they also know about that. And who are living in the coastal areas, they also know better how to accommodate with the coastal areas during the disasters or any situation of the climate change. So we are taking the inputs from all those people, from the people from all corners, and from the people of all sphere of societies. So this time, which you are telling that many consultations are being happening, and we are taking the inputs from.
Thank you very much for the government's openness and willingness. Farah, your observation about the river has triggered a question. Okay, so I'll give you a chance, but let me first read you the question. The question is that how feasible to implement the legal personhood to rivers considering the social and economic context of Bangladesh? That is a question for you. You can reflect a little bit. I want to go to Amrita first and then come to you. So Amrita, I don't know if you would like to respond to that specific question about the northeast part of India, Assam, the loss of biodiversity because of the oil and gas exploration and those activities. So I don't know if you would like to reflect on that specific question or anything else, because time is running out. If you want to say anything else in your next 2 minutes, floor is yours. Thank you.
Maybe I'll just try to answer that question, not answer exactly. So there's a lot of oil and gas activities happening in northeastern India. And we are aware that a lot of biodiversity, climatic impacts also happen there. So to kind of mitigate or in response to that, the government of Assam is developing the first carbon neutral district, Majuli, So it's a river island in Assam, under government of Assam, and that has been made totally carbon neutral. So whatever sources of power are required, power or energy are required, everything is coming from renewable sources. And even after that, whatever emissions are happening, they are having this forest cover, which is acting as a carbon sink. So net, it is a net zero model that India is trying to showcase, and which will be replicated in the other states also. Of course, on the biodiversity losses, the Oil India and ONGC, the two main mining companies, oil and gas mining companies of India, they are trying to take on certain actions like, preserving the forest, preserving certain areas of the forest, and government is not really allowing any kind of mining activities over there. But beyond that, I don't see any much government action also happening.
Thank you so much for now. Farah, you have the floor. Couple of minutes if you want to.
Okay.
Thank you.
The first question about how feasible is it? It's absolutely feasible if there's a political will. When it was being polluted, no one asked the people. And it was polluted, no one monitored. People went around setting up businesses or used the water and tried to control the river, tried to abuse the river. So I think if you ask me, it is possible as long as there's a political will. If it is about economic or displacement of people, we have to come up with the alternatives, because we are talking about a plan and yet we are not proposing the alternatives. The plan and the action does not match. So I would say that just as this is a legislation, as of now, anyone can go and complain that the river around my city or my district or my village is being polluted, is being encroached, and there will be action, there'll be monitoring. So I think it's a very positive point. Secondly, my observations about the consultations happen. Consultations have been happening on women's rights since I was born, because my predecessors, they also fought for women's rights. But how gender sensitive are we? How many of those recommendations have we acted upon? Social practices and norms, have they changed? Are you holding society accountable on that? So we can go on that. I don't want to go on that. I want to believe that if there is a plan, it needs to be rolled out. There has to be an action plan with the finances and some monitoring elements. We have the National Adaptation Plan. I want to see how annual and 5-year planning for it. We have the Muji Prosperity Plan. I want to see in the next 3 years what will be done. We have the 8th 5-year plan. Let's make those alignments. Then we will get the 9th 5-year plan. Let's make those alignments. Then we have the national budgets in all these countries. Let's make those alignments. So we cannot have separate pieces of policies, separate plans. There has to be coherence. The most important here is coherence, coordination, and political will. And I want to remind that the indigenous community knowledge has to be respected. But the indigenous community is also vulnerable because of climate change. What they have practiced for the last 1,000 years cannot or may not hold true today because of global warming and because of water level rising, intense and frequent disasters. So let's help the indigenous community also to get knowledge and information. While we listen to them, we also give them what is the new information and what can be done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making those very powerful and crucial points, bringing them to the discussion table. We just have 3 minutes left, so I want to go back to two of my speakers. So Shahida, I want to start with you. I give you 1 minute. Anything you would like to say in your wrapping up remarks? You have the floor, madam.
Thank you so very much. I think I would like to say is that regrettably, developed countries are responsible for 80% of carbon emission throughout the course of history, and this needs to change because our grave concern is that the global average temperature should stay below 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5 degrees Celsius for our survival. And when we lose our islands because of sea level rise and we lose our culture, tradition, stripped of our livelihood, our identity and our homes, there's no adapting to any of this. Our struggle is to live in safety and not in as environmental refugees. And this largely depends on all of you. Climate change could cut world economy by 23 trillion by 2050. But that is not all. By this time, the global temperatures are also likely to increase as much as 2.6 degrees Celsius by 2050, based on current trajectories. By then, we may no longer be here. If it is us today, it's going to be you tomorrow. So be intentional and determined in your words and deeds. Save us, save the world. Thank you.
Okay, and I hope the businesses in the Maldives will play their role in saving the world. Jahir, 1 minute, last 1 minute for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think nothing is impossible if we work together. It's a teamwork. Together, everyone achieves more. So if we want to achieve more, we need to work together. And the willingness, I think, I go with Ms. Kabir here, that the willingness of everyone is, I think, more important than anything else. Political willingness and also the willingness of the business people, the business community, that I need to change. I want to change. And I want to show the world that this is possible. So if we work together as a team, I think we can achieve it. And we need to start today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let us start today and make more decisive actions. May I invite all of you to have a round of applause for all the speakers and participants, and also for asking questions. My apologies that I could not take all the questions from the floor or in the virtual chat box, but I hope the discussion can continue over the lunch because I did not want to deny you the right to food. So I'm finishing the session on time. The next session, probably I will pass it on to provide further information. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. The panel, we will be going to launch very soon. If I can share a few takeaways very, very quickly, I think panelists re-emphasize that all of us need to come together.